Audrey Hepburn picking cherries in 1971. During that period, the actress had almost completely stepped away from cinema to devote herself to family life in Switzerland. Years later, she would return to public life as a UNICEF ambassador, dedicating her final years to humanitarian work in Africa and Asia. Billie Holiday with her boxer Mister at the Downbeat Club in New York in 1947. The singer was known for her deep connection with animals and frequently appeared accompanied by her dogs. That was a difficult year for her, marked by a drug arrest and the loss of her cabaret performance license. Beginning in 1989, Christopher Cerrone, who played young Henry Hill in Goodfellas, was going through his normal teenage routine. Martin Scorsese's film would become one of the great classics of gangster cinema, but Cerrone would pursue a quiet career well away from the major Hollywood spotlight. Brothers Brian, Carl, and Dennis Wilson outside their home in Hawthorne, California in the late 1950s. A few years later, they would form the Beach Boys alongside cousin Mike Love, creating the definitive California soundtrack and some of the most complex vocal harmonies in all of popular music. A teenage girl at Woodstock tries to stay dry and warm in 1969. Torrential rains transformed the festival into a sea of mud, but the audience of 500,000 people remained on site for 3 days. The collective resilience of those young people became a central part of the event's enduring mythology. Prince at the 1985 Academy Awards. The musician won that night for Best Original Song Score for Purple Rain, the semi-autobiographical film in which he starred. The album sold more than 20 million copies and transformed Prince into one of the most influential and unpredictable artists of his generation. Tricentennial encampment at Stevens Farm in 1986. Commemorative encampments reenacted historical periods and were popular in the United States during foundational anniversary celebrations, combining historical education, family recreation, and a strong sense of local community identity and shared heritage. John Lennon signing autographs in 1980. That year, the musician was returning to activity with the album Double Fantasy after 5 years away devoted to raising his son, Sean. He would be murdered in December of that same year, outside his New York apartment building, at 40 years of age. Hunter S. Thompson at his home in Aspen in 1990. The creator of gonzo journalism, Thompson mixed reportage, fiction, and personal experience in writing that redefined American journalism. His Colorado property, named Owl Farm, was simultaneously a refuge and a creative laboratory for his singular work. Colonel Harlan Sanders demonstrates his famous fried chicken preparation method to manager John Asquaga. Sanders began franchising his recipe at 65 years old, traveling across the United States by car to persuade restaurant owners, and built one of the largest food empires in the entire world. Muhammad Ali after Ken Norton broke his jaw in 1973. Norton, even more than Frazier, is considered by many the most problematic opponent of Ali's career, with a style that neutralized his advantages. Ali fought several rounds with a fractured jaw before losing the bout by split decision. A Happy Family displays their book collection from a Cincinnati bookmobile in 1940. Mobile libraries brought books to rural communities and neighborhoods without access to fixed library buildings, serving as a fundamental instrument for democratizing reading in the United States throughout the 20th century. Joe Pesci on guitar and Frank Vincent on drums in 1970. Before becoming recurring partners in Martin Scorsese's films, the two played together in bar bands in New Jersey. It was that decades-long friendship that created the explosive chemistry seen in Raging Bull and Goodfellas years afterward. Fisher Stevens and Parker Posey were well-known figures in the New York indie community and dated for several years in the mid-1990s. Posey was nicknamed the Queen of Independent Cinema, appearing in dozens of productions that defined the American indie movement throughout that entire decade. Dale Earnhardt Jr., at 6 years old, watches the NASCAR Richmond 400 race in 1981, photographed by Dozier Mobley. The son of one of the greatest drivers in the sport's history, Earnhardt Jr. would himself become a champion and NASCAR's most popular driver for 15 consecutive years. Jewish children playing in Casablanca, Morocco. The Moroccan Jewish community dates back more than 2,000 years and numbered roughly 250,000 people by the mid-20th century. Most emigrated to Israel, France, and Canada in the decades following the establishment of the State of Israel. Hockey team of the Madras Sappers of the British Indian Army in the 1930s. Field hockey was the dominant sport in colonial India, and the country would win 6 consecutive Olympic gold medals between 1928 and 1956, one of the greatest periods of sporting hegemony ever recorded in any discipline. Anthrax with Chuck D and Flavor Flav of Public Enemy in 1991. Their collaboration on the re-recording of Bring the Noise was a landmark in the fusion of rap and heavy metal, paving the way for the rap metal genre that would dominate the following decade with bands like Rage Against the Machine. A cattle market in Warsaw in 1980. That was a decisive year for Poland, with the strikes at the Gdansk shipyard that led to the founding of the Solidarity Trade Union. Food shortages and long queues were part of everyday routine under the planned economy of the Polish communist regime. A Vietnam War protest in 1969. That year, the anti-war movement reached its peak in the United States, with the October moratorium gathering millions of people in demonstrations across the country. Popular pressure would prove decisive in the gradual withdrawal of American troops from the conflict. Freddie Mercury and Diego Maradona in Argentina in 1981. Queen was undertaking a historic tour of South America, playing to packed stadiums. Maradona, then at Boca Juniors and about to transfer to Europe, joined the band on stage before tens of thousands of people in Buenos Aires that night. Norwegian actress Julie Ege photographed in the 1970s. Ege built a career in British cinema, appearing in Hammer horror films and in a James Bond production. She later abandoned acting to train as a nurse, a profession she practiced in Norway until the end of her life, many years afterward. John Lennon with his mother Julia in the late 1940s. Julia was a decisive figure in the musician's life. She taught him banjo and encouraged his interest in rock and roll. Her early death in 1958 would profoundly mark Lennon and inspire songs such as Julia and Mother throughout his career. Joe Frazier after defeating Muhammad Ali in 1971. Frazier was nearly 4 inches shorter than Ali and had lost sight in one eye, a condition he concealed from boxing commissions for much of his career. His victory in the fight of the century was among the greatest triumphs in the sport's history. Joey Ramone in the early 1980s. The Ramones vocalist, standing 6 feet 6 inches tall with his awkward posture, became one of the most recognizable visual icons of punk. The Queen's band created a minimalist, high-speed sound that redefined rock and influenced virtually all punk music worldwide. West Indies legend Garfield Sobers, considered by many the greatest all-rounder in the history of cricket. Sobers was the first player to hit 6 sixes in a single over of first-class cricket and captained the Caribbean side for years, becoming an enduring sporting symbol of the entire region. Early field testing of the quarter-ton Jeep at New River, North Carolina in 1941. The vehicle would become a symbol of the American war effort, with more than 600,000 units produced. Its simplicity and durability revolutionized military transport and gave rise to the entire utility vehicle industry. John Lennon and his mother Julia in the late 1940s. Julia would be struck and killed by a car in 1958, driven by an off-duty police officer. Lennon was 17, and the loss would create a bond with Paul McCartney, who had also lost his mother, uniting the two in a profound lifelong friendship. A man apparently levitating Michael Jackson with telekinetic powers in 1984. The image plays with the mystique built around the artist that year, when Thriller dominated the planet and Jackson was the most famous performer in the world, surrounded by rumors and urban legends of every conceivable kind. Lane Staley of Alice in Chains in front of a tour truck during Lollapalooza in 1993. The traveling festival, created by Perry Farrell, was fundamental in consolidating alternative rock as a mass phenomenon. Alice in Chains was then experiencing the height of success with the album Dirt, Ace Frehley relaxing at home in 1978. The Kiss guitarist released his solo album that year, part of an unprecedented strategy in which all four members released individual records simultaneously. Frehley's was the best received by critics and audiences alike, producing a genuine radio hit single. Lieutenant J. Kostelek of the 1st Special Service Force, a Canadian-American commando unit of the Second World War. Known as the Devil's Brigade, the elite force conducted nighttime operations in mountainous terrain in Italy and is considered a precursor to modern special forces units worldwide. A couple with their baby in Saitama, Japan, in 1947. The country was living through the extremely harsh years of American occupation following defeat in the Second World War, with severe food shortages and destroyed cities. The extraordinary reconstruction of the following decades would transform Japan. Robin Williams photographed in 1979. The comedian had exploded the previous year with the series Mork and Mindy, revealing an improvisational talent that astonished colleagues and directors alike. He would build a rare career, alternating popular comedies with deeply sensitive, dramatic performances. Dolly Parton and Mick Jagger in New York in 1977. Parton was then breaking through the boundaries of traditional country and reaching pop audiences, while Jagger was the biggest rock star in the world. The meeting symbolized the increasing fluidity between musical genres in 1970s America. Joe Strummer of The Clash, performing in Bologna, Italy, in 1980. The band was then touring after the release of London Calling, a double album that radically expanded the boundaries of punk. Strummer was known for the physical intensity of his performances and the political engagement of his lyrics. Writer Thomas R. Pynchon, at 18 years old, in 1955. Pynchon would become one of the most influential and enigmatic novelists in American literature, author of Gravity's Rainbow. He is famous for his absolute reclusion. He refuses interviews, and virtually no adult photographs of him exist. Italian partisans in Florence sing in the rain during the arms surrender ceremony on September 7, 1944. The city had been liberated weeks earlier with decisive participation from the local resistance. Partisans were fundamental in the fight against fascism and the German occupation throughout Italy. November 1978, Sylvester Stallone, his brother Frank, and the dog Butkus during principal photography of Rocky II. Butkus was Stallone's real-life pet and appeared in the first film. The actor had been forced to sell him for lack of money before his success, later buying the dog back at great cost. An automat in Times Square, New York, around 1925. Automats were restaurants where food was served by coin-operated machines without waiters. They were an American urban phenomenon for decades, a symbol of modernity and the democratization of access to quick and affordable meals in the city. Nick Offerman, at 24 years old in 1994. The actor was still working in Chicago theater and as a professional carpenter, a trade he would maintain throughout his life. Years later, he would become famous as Ron Swanson on Parks and Recreation, a character embodying his real passion for woodworking. Just Fontaine is lifted by his French national teammates after scoring his 13th and final goal in the World Cup. The record for goals in a single tournament, set in 1958 in Sweden, remains unbeaten to this day and is considered among the most improbable marks ever to be surpassed in football. Danish actress Annette Strøyberg photographed in the 1960s. Strøyberg was married to French filmmaker Roger Vadim and starred in his film Dangerous Liaisons in 1959. Her career in European cinema was brief, but she remained a well-known figure in Parisian social life for many years afterward. In 1963, Vic Morrow and his wife Barbara Turner with their baby daughter Jennifer Jason Leigh. Morrow was an actor known for the series Combat and would die tragically in 1982 in an on-set accident. Jennifer would become one of the most respected actresses of her generation in American independent cinema. Jimi Hendrix, at 15 years old, with his first electric guitar in 1957. His father bought the second-hand instrument for $5. Left-handed, Hendrix learned by reversing the strings on right-handed guitars, a technique that contributed to the unique tone that would revolutionize the instrument. Larry David, around 1955, still a child in Brooklyn. Decades later, David would co-create Seinfeld, considered by many the greatest sitcom in American television history, and would then star in Curb Your Enthusiasm, a series in which he plays an exaggerated and deeply antisocial version of himself. Michael J. Fox at 25 and Susanna Hoffs at 27 on a date night in 1986. Fox was living the height of success after Back to the Future, while Hoffs fronted the Bangles, a band dominating the charts with Manic Monday and Walk Like an Egyptian during that very same period. Maradona getting his monthly touch-up at the barbershop in Buenos Aires in 1977. The player was only 16 years old and was already the greatest promise in Argentine football, having debuted professionally for Argentinos Juniors the previous year. His international breakthrough would come soon after. James Doohan, known as Scotty from Star Trek, as a young man with his grandmother in the 1940s. Before acting, Doohan served in the Canadian Army and landed at Normandy on D-Day, where he was hit by 6 bullets, losing the middle finger of his right hand, a fact he skillfully concealed on screen. James Baldwin, photographed in the 1960s. A writer, essayist, and activist, Baldwin was one of the most lucid and forceful voices on race, sexuality, and identity in the United States. Works such as Notes of a Native Son remain central to understanding the Black American experience in the 20th century. 60 years ago, British Railways abandoned its color bar, which prevented black workers from holding certain positions. The change resulted from a long union and community campaign and was an important milestone in the struggle against racial discrimination in the British labor market. Volcanologists Katia and Maurice Kraft in the 1970s. The French couple devoted their lives to documenting eruptions up close, producing spectacular images that revolutionized the study of volcanoes. They died together in 1991, struck by a pyroclastic flow while filming Mount Unzen in Japan. Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, alongside Jesse the Body Ventura in 1985. All three were central figures in the explosion of American professional wrestling during that decade. Ventura would leave the ring to become an actor and later governor of Minnesota, elected in 1998 as an independent. Gillian Anderson in 1996. The actress was then at the height of the worldwide success of The X-Files, a series that redefined science fiction on television. Anderson was only 24 when cast as Dana Scully, a character who would inspire a generation of women to pursue scientific careers. Pam Grier in 1970. The actress would become the biggest star of blaxploitation cinema with films such as Coffee and Foxy Brown, playing strong and independent heroines in an era with very few such roles for black women. Quentin Tarantino would revive her career in Jackie Brown in 1997. Sally Field in the early 1970s. The actress had become known through light-hearted television series and struggled to be taken seriously as a dramatic performer. She would achieve the breakthrough with Sybil in 1976 and later win 2 Best Actress Oscars for Norma Ray and Places in the Heart.